Hello everyone, this video will be the remainder of Chapter 6 of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. I apologize for coughing at the end of the video. It is not because I am sick, it was because my throat was really dry from reading for so long. And so here I have my Jane Austen mug again, and I'm going to take some sips of water as I read. So, last thing that happened in Chapter 6, Charlotte Lucas is sort of egging Elizabeth on. Mr. Darcy is there, and they're obviously still upset about him, saying that she's just tolerable, and so that's where we left off. So I'll read a little bit of what I read on the previous video. So Charlotte Lucas says this: "It will be her turn soon to be teased," said Miss Lucas. "I'm going to open the instrument, Eliza, and you know what follows." So she's going to open up the piano. She expects Elizabeth to be able to play something. "You are a very strange creature by way of a friend, always wanting me to play and sing before anybody and everybody. If my vanity had taken a musical turn, you would have been invaluable. But as it is, I would really rather not sit down before those who must be in the habit of hearing the very best performers." On Miss Lucas's persevering, however, she added, "Very well, if it must be so, it must." And gravely glancing at Mr. Darcy, "There is a very fine old saying, which everybody here is of course familiar with: 'Keep your breath to cool your porridge,' and I shall keep mine to swell my song." So Elizabeth is not too happy about playing, and she even kind of says, "I'm not the best piano player, and it may not be the best for people who are used to hearing more talented musicians." Her performance was pleasing, though by no means capital. After a song or two, and before she could reply to the entreaties of several that she would sing again, she was eagerly succeeded at the instrument by her sister Mary, who, having, in consequence of being the only plain one in the family, worked hard for knowledge and accomplishments, was always impatient for display. Poor Mary Bennet. Jane Austen saying that because she's not as pretty as the rest of her sisters, she has to work a little bit hard to hone her other talents. So she's very well read and bright and really works hard at playing the piano. So she enjoys showing off because that's her chance to shine. Mary had neither genius nor taste. And though vanity had given her application, it had given her likewise a pedantic air and conceited manner, which would have injured a higher degree of excellence than she had reached. Elizabeth, easy and unaffected, had been listened to with much more pleasure, though not playing half so well. And Mary, at the end of a long concerto, was glad to purchase praise and gratitude by Scotch and Irish airs, at the request of her younger sisters, who, with some of the Lucases and 2 or 3 officers, joined eagerly in dancing at one end of the room. So, again, poor Mary, even though she does practice a great deal and try to be a good piano player, she has neither genius nor taste. So she's not an excellent piano player, and she doesn't have the best taste. So she's really vain about her piano playing, but she's not the best at it, which is not a very good combination. Mr. Darcy stood near them in silent indignation at such a mode of passing the evening, to the exclusion of all conversation, and was too much engrossed by his own thoughts to perceive that Sir William Lucas was his neighbour, till Sir William thus began: "What a charming amusement for young people this is, Mr. Darcy. There is nothing like dancing, after all. I consider it as one of the first refinements of polished societies." "Certainly, sir, and it has the advantage also of being in vogue amongst the less polished societies of the world. Every savage can dance." So Mr. Darcy makes a really condescending remark there. Mr. William Lucas is just trying to be nice and friendly and say, "Oh, isn't it fun that we're all dancing?" And Mr. Darcy says, "Oh, anyone can dance. It's really no big deal." Also notice that Mr. Darcy himself is choosing not to dance, which may not speak too well of his dancing abilities, or he may just be saying these things in other words because he doesn't feel like dancing himself. Sir William only smiled. Your friend performs delightfully," he continued, after a pause, on seeing Bingley join the group. "And I doubt not that you are an adept in the science yourself, Mr. Darcy. You saw me dance at Meryton, I believe, sir?" "Yes, indeed, and received no inconsiderable pleasure from the sight. Do you often dance at St. James?" "Never, sir." "Do you not think it would be a proper compliment to the place?" "It is a compliment which I never pay to any place if I can avoid it." So, now it's been confirmed Mr. Darcy is not a fan of dancing. "You have a house in town, I conclude." Mr. Darcy bowed. "I had once some thoughts of fixing in town myself, for I am fond of superior society, but I did not feel quite certain that the air of London would agree with Lady Lucas." He paused in hopes of an answer, but his companion was not disposed to make any, and Elizabeth, at that instant moving towards them, he was struck with the notion of doing a very gallant thing, and called out to her, "My dear Miss Eliza, why are you not dancing?" So this is Sir William Lucas saying this across the room. "Mr. Darcy, you must allow me to present this young lady to you as a very desirable partner. You cannot refuse to dance, I am sure, when so much beauty is before you." And taking her hand, he would have given it to Mr. Darcy, who, though extremely surprised, was not unwilling to receive it, when she instantly drew back and said with some discomposure to Sir William, "Indeed, sir, I have not the least intention of dancing. I entreat you not to suppose that I move this way in order to beg for a partner." So Sir William Lucas tries to kind of, smooth over things and get Elizabeth to dance with Mr. Darcy, and she knows that, at least in her mind, that he still thinks her just, not tolerable or tolerable enough, but not enough to dance with. So she doesn't want to dance. Mr. Darcy at this point is interested in her, so he wouldn't mind it. Now there's just this very awkward tension. Mr. Darcy, with grave propriety, requested to be allowed the honor of her hand, but in vain. Elizabeth was determined, nor did Sir William at all shake her purpose by his attempt at persuasion. "You excel so much in the dance, Miss Eliza, that it is cruel to deny me the happiness of seeing you. And though this gentleman dislikes the amusement in general, he can have no objection, I am sure, to oblige us for 1/2 hour." "Mr. Darcy is all politeness," said Elizabeth, smiling. "He is indeed, but considering the inducement, my dear Eliza, we cannot wonder at his complaisance, for who would object to such a partner?" We have some dramatic irony going on here, so we know that Mr. Darcy said that he wouldn't dance with Elizabeth. Elizabeth knows that. Mr. Darcy knows that, but Sir William Lucas has no idea. It's going completely over his head, so he really kind of makes this big blunder by saying, "Oh, who would object to Elizabeth?" when we know that Mr. Darcy just did and may again. Elizabeth looked archly and turned away, so she has this kind of sly look on her face. Her resistance had not injured her with the gentleman, and he was thinking of her with some complacency when thus accosted by Miss Bingley. So Mr. Darcy he's not too upset that Elizabeth turned him down. It kind of, bodes well. He likes that she's not so easygoing and that she's not just going to kind of go with the flow. He respects her a little bit more for saying no to dancing with him. So then he's accosted by Miss Bingley. So Mr. Bingley's sister, Caroline, says this. "I can guess the subject of your reverie." "I should imagine not. You are considering how insupportable it would be to pass many evenings in this manner, in such society, and indeed, I am quite of your opinion. I was never more annoyed. The insipidity, and yet the noise, the nothingness, and yet the self-importance of all these people. What I would give to hear your strictures on them." So Caroline Bingley goes, "Oh my gosh, I hate dancing. Isn't this so boring? All these people are so blah." "Your conjecture is totally wrong, I assure you. My mind is more agreeably engaged. I have been meditating on the very great pleasure which a pair of fine eyes in the face of a pretty woman can bestow." So he's thinking about Elizabeth. Miss Bingley immediately fixed her eyes on his face and desired he would tell her what lady had the credit of inspiring such reflections. Mr. Darcy replied with great intrepidity, "Miss Elizabeth Bennet." "Miss Elizabeth Bennet," repeated Miss Bingley. "I am all astonishment. How long has she been such a favourite? And pray, when am I to wish you joy?" "That is exactly the question which I expected you to ask. A lady's imagination is very rapid. It jumps from admiration to love, from love to matrimony in a moment. I knew you would be wishing me joy." So by wishing him joy, Caroline's saying, "Oh, when can I congratulate you on the wedding?" And Mr. Darcy says, "Oh, that's always how you operate. You just jump from one thing to another and are moving us along way too quickly." "Nay, if you are so serious about it, I shall consider the matter as absolutely settled. You will have a charming mother-in-law indeed, and of course she will always be at Pemberley with you." So now Caroline is teasing him about Mrs. Bennet. Neither of them are big fans of her. And she's saying, "Oh, well, if you marry Elizabeth, you have to deal with her mom all the time." So she's just kind of digging into him in a playful sort of way. But as we keep reading, see if you think that she's serious or more playful. He listened to her with perfect indifference while she chose to entertain herself in this manner. And as his composure convinced her that all was safe, her wit flowed long. So Mr. Darcy does not react to Caroline teasing him. He's just very stoic, composed, flat-faced. And because he doesn't react, Caroline just keeps going with, ribbing him and egging him on. And that is chapter 6. Hope you guys enjoyed.